Good afternoon and a very warm Emirati Ahlan wa Sahlan welcome to one and all. Lord Udny-Lister, Your Excellency, Mansour Al-Buhul, the Ambassador to the United Kingdom from the UAE, Your other Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all joining us this afternoon, this morning, this evening, depending on which time zone I find you in. And importantly, I hope I find you all in good health, both physical health and also mental health. And I'm hoping this afternoon is going to be not only informative, but also enjoyable, because, as I say, the importance of mental health, we need to enjoy ourselves. And we're not doing all this work just to be miserable, but to enjoy. And I think we're going to have a fun afternoon as well as an interesting afternoon. Just a couple of things from my side before we get started. I'll say thanks at the end. But just Sheikh Zayed, the founding father, God rest his soul, had this wonderful saying: a people with no history, no past, had no present and no future, because from the past we learn. And part of what this is all about, in my opinion, is that we're going to learn from the past, and because of what we've learned from the past, we'll be able to look forward to what I believe is a very promising future. And the UAE has, in the last 50 years, demonstrated it is a jewel in a crown. It's a jewel in a very, not a great neighborhood, pretty disrupted neighborhood. And what's been done with the Constitution is a good example of role model for, what can be achieved, and is a great advertisement to others in the neighborhood. The other thing I'd like to say is the importance of relationships. And of course, we all know the importance of relationships. Don't need to be telling you that. But this is all about relationships. I believe this UAE 50 program that Oxford Cyber Academy have kindly assembled for us today. And we're very privileged to have Lord Edward Udny-Lister talk to us today. The importance of trade. He's a subject matter expert, and he can tell us, not only what has been done, but the exciting future that lies ahead for both our countries. And this is also a trilateral event. We have people from the United States of America, from AmCham, on this webinar. And well, I do believe in inclusion and diversity and all the rest of it. And I think it's great that they've kindly joined us as well. So it's a really, really exciting team that we've got to talk to us this afternoon. It's now up to me to invite Dr. Monica Meyer, who's the MD of the 50th UAE 50, and also project from Oxford Cyber Academy, and who's very kindly been the engine to get all of this event going. So Dr. Monica, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was a very inspiring welcome note. Dear panelists, dear participants, good afternoon, and many thanks for joining us today. Please let me welcome you on behalf of the Oxford Cyber Academy, which is an independent educational and research institute in Oxford. Our goal is to facilitate expert knowledge sharing, essential research into different disciplines, and quality learning. I'm very honored to give a short introduction to today's webinar on the UAE 50 program, a new initiative from our research wing, the Oxford Commission on Constitution. As we all know, 2021 is the 50th anniversary of the federal unification of the 7 states of the United Arab Emirates. Perhaps it is less well known that it's also the Golden Jubilee of its constitution. Now, Golden Jubilee is always a great opportunity to give account of the past, to assess the present, and for making plans for the future. To mark this year's occasion, OCC, in collaboration with NYU Abu Dhabi, is organizing an international conference in November 2021. This will be followed by a 3-year research program focusing on the part the Constitution has played in the social, economic, and political life of the UAE. It will also reflect on its potential contribution for the next half century. Now, you may wonder how it is relevant to you. A constitution is an important part of a nation's cultural heritage and the very foundation of its legal system. Constitutional arrangements and the legal framework based on it are vital to running and financing businesses. Certainly, our aim is to deliver the findings from the 3-year research program as practical and essential information that will be of direct benefit to you. We also hope that the project outcomes will be the basis for various educational purposes within the Union, including programs in civic education for adults as well as for children. These aims and objectives will be achieved through publications of various kinds, the preparation of digital materials, and through offering a range of courses, seminars, and discussions. The purpose of this webinar today is to introduce our program to you with the help of my knowledgeable colleagues and to inspire you to join us as collaborative partners for the UAE 50 program. As you will see, there are plenty of opportunities to join. Take part as a panelist in our international conference, get your brand name associated with different events, publications, online forums, and exhibitions, or simply share your expert and corporate memories of the last 50 years within our Sense of Time project. Today, at the end of the presentations, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions or share your thoughts around these projects. I would very much like to encourage you to speak up and share your memories. I actually very much look forward to that part of the discussion. Finally, let me please say thanks to NYU Abu Dhabi, BBG, UUBC, and AmCham for all their support in organizing today's webinar and for all their help for the UAE program to succeed. Special thanks to Lord Edward Udny-Lister, co-chair of the UAE UK Business Council, for supporting us and taking the time to join us today. Lord Udny-Lister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for that very kind introduction. And I'm very grateful to the Oxford Cyber Academy, the Oxford Commission on Constitutions, and the New York University Abu Dhabi for hosting this very timely webinar and for giving me an opportunity to set out a little bit how the UAE UK Business Council can add value to the work of both the UK and the UAE governments in delivering a substantive change in our trade and investment relations during this critical year. Well, the primary focus for both countries this year will be recovery from the pandemic and addressing the challenges of climate change. We also have a shared interest in building more resilience through economic diversification, investment in infrastructure, upskilling our workforces, and embracing new trading relationships with partners in our respective regions and indeed beyond. The UK and UAE are following very similar paths in terms of economic development. Both countries have developed a business environment that is investor friendly. That is why we both score so well on the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rankings. The UK is 8th place, the UAE is 16th place out of 189 countries. The UAE's recent announcement allowing 100% foreign ownership in most sectors across the entire country, not just in the free zones, will be a major incentive for UK companies looking to establish their regional operations there. Likewise, following our departure from the EU, the UK is developing new strategies to attract foreign investors who wish to use the UK as a springboard for global growth. The creation of 8 new free ports across the UK will not only attract greater investment from around the world, but will provide much needed economic stimulus to the towns and regions where they are located. But our future trading relationships will be very different from the trading relationships that have been with us for the last 50 years. The world is decarbonising, and while oil and gas will naturally continue to be an important part of the UAE's economy for the time being, in 50 years' time, the country will be better known, I think, for being an exporter of innovation, technology, and creativity. And that really takes me, I think, to the important area, and that is education. Two British universities, Heriot-Watt and the University of Birmingham, will be launching their new campuses in Dubai later this year. And I think that's a pretty clear sign of UK confidence in the UAE's strong reputation as an educational hub for the wide region. The Business Council has a working group. It's one of 5 working groups that we have, and it's on education, culture and skills, with senior representatives from the UK, UAE, on its working group, and focusing on quality assurance and recognition of qualifications, and will be conducting its first workshops on this topic next week. The group has also hosted a seminar on vocational and technical training, and we're looking at opportunities for collaboration in the cultural training section in the near future. So you can see, for us, education is a major part of our programme. I can't resist, of course, making the point now, if I may. This is the 50th anniversary year, and it's a step change in the level of UAE's investment in the UK. And Mubadala announced in March that the UK would become one of its strategic investment partner. An announcement that included confirmation of an 800 million contribution by Mubadala into a £1 billion life science partnership with the UK Office for Investment. And that, I hope, is just the beginning. His Excellency, Ahmed Al-Sayed, who is my co-chair, and I act as the connector between the Business Council and the government, representing our respective business communities at the annual joint Ministerial Economic Committee. And that allows us and enables us to draw upon information on market access and trade policy. And we can show that we can work together. This year is the 10th anniversary of the Business Council. It has gone through a major restructuring, and our aim is to play a much more pivotal role, an influential role, in supporting bilateral trade. I think enough from me, and I think it's now for me to pass on to Professor Denis Galligan, Professor of Socio-Legal Studies and Emeritus in the Law Facility at Oxford University, and a Professional Fellow of the Wolfson College.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. Monica has introduced very clearly and admirably the aims of the webinar, and indeed the aims and purposes of the research project that we are proposing. So just to enlarge, as Lord Lister said, I'm Professor of Socio-Legal Studies at Oxford University, Emeritus, I hasten to say. Not very long emeritus, but nevertheless emeritus. I have an interest in the law in society, so what does that mean? I think it means essentially how does the legal structure, and of course the Constitution creates the legal structure, how does that legal structure shape and affect and guide the life of a society? How does it arrange the affairs, provide the stability for doing business? How does it spell out the relationship between the people and government? These are all very interesting and complex issues that constitutional study reveals. I'm also happy to say that I'm academic advisor to the Oxford Commission on Constitutions, which again has been introduced. So first of all, a note about the long-standing connections between the UAE and Oxford University, a long record of having students from the region. In fact, one of my most recent doctoral students was from the region. It's also particularly wonderful to note that the Rhodes Scholarship system has recently been extended to the UAE, and that the Minister for Youth is indeed the first holder of an Oxford Rhodes Scholarship. So clearly there are old links, and I might just add to that the interest the university has had for many years in the affairs of this region, in the art and culture and history of the Middle East and beyond. All right, now let me turn to constitutions, which is the subject of our discussion. What are constitutions about? Well, as I mentioned, they provide the structure for a nation to organize its affairs. I would put it that way. And so the issues that are interesting are, what is the nature and function? How does the Constitution achieve that purpose of arranging the affairs of the nation? How is the document to be drafted and designed? These were very interesting questions I found in the post-1989 years in Eastern and Central Europe. This desire, this zeal to create new constitutions was most fascinating. What are the values and the institutions that the Constitution reflects and incorporates? And importantly, as I mentioned, what is the relationship between the people and the officials and agencies of government? An issue of particular interest to those of us at the Oxford Commission for Constitutions is, what are the variables that affect whether a constitution works well, achieves its purposes, or not? And that is something that is very challenging and very interesting, and on which there is a lot of important research. Well, what about the UAE? So I became interested in the UAE in 2016 after giving a lecture at NYU Abu Dhabi, thanks to the invitation of John Coughlin. Having given that lecture, I became interested in the constitutional affairs of the region. I became interested in particular in the history of the making of the Constitution. Then secondly, how has this Constitution worked over the 50 years since its beginning in a period of enormously fast change in the world and change within the Gulf region itself? And the third issue that I began to think about was, what about the future? Given the changes that have occurred in the UAE in 50 years, what will be the changes for the next 50 years? Well, of course, we can't predict, but we can try to prepare the constitutional framework to cope with those changes, whatever they may be. So that leads me to the proposed research we have before you today. The idea is, following that three-part division I just mentioned, the history, how it has worked for 50 years, and being prepared for the next 50 years. They are the three subjects that will guide our research. They are the three subjects that will be introduced in the forthcoming international conference. So we see the conference, we hope the conference will identify critical issues of past, present, and future, which we can then take up and examine more thoroughly and in more detail. The research proposed will rely on several experienced researchers who will be commissioned to work with us. The research will be overseen from Oxford, but plainly much of it will occur in the Gulf, in the UAE itself. Indeed, we might add the research will also be of interest outside the UAE. So I think, given that the UAE has become something of a model constitutional order, a model that has managed to achieve rapid change comfortably enough, perhaps that is a good model for neighboring countries from which they might learn. That is one of our hopes. The funding, the research will stretch over 3 years. And of course, my final point, it depends on funding. So we hope that both the conference and the following research project, which is ambitious, but we think it is very worthwhile for some of the reasons that have been mentioned already. We think it is very worthwhile both within the UAE and, as I said, as a model outside from which others might learn. So in a way, we're appealing to those of you with an interest financial or business interest in the region to support this project. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is John Coughlin, and very happy to be with you this morning. I am a faculty member at NYU Abu Dhabi. I teach law there. I teach also religious studies. I have doctorates in both. And I'm the program head, the founding program head of the law program, the legal studies program at NYU Abu Dhabi. So first of all, let me say thanks to Professor Galligan. And when he mentioned this idea of the conference to me, I was just immediately filled with enthusiasm for it. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I think the conference is going to be historic. I mean, to look at the UAE Constitution, as Professor Galligan said, from the perspective of it being paradigmatic for not just the region, but for countries globally, is quite interesting, both academically and in terms of its practical implications. So it's a historic conference, and I'm very pleased to be part of it. So I thank Professor Galligan for the invitation, and also Monica for all the work that she's done in putting this together. It's a lot. As long as I'm expressing gratitude, I should really express gratitude to the government of the United Arab Emirates, because it's the royal family and the government that make NYU Abu Dhabi possible. The university was founded basically through an agreement between the royal family and the president at the time of New York University, John Sexton. And that was approximately 11 years ago, and it has thrived since then. It's just a young branch of NYU. It's what we call a portal campus. New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai are NYU's portal campuses, main campuses. And because of the financial support and other types of support that have been so generously given to us by the UAE, the university, although it's fledgling, is prospering. And Professor Galligan mentioned Rhodes Scholars. I think we've had already, out of 9 graduating classes, 19 Rhodes Scholars from NYU Abu Dhabi, which is, I like to remind my colleagues in New York at NYU New York, that's more than the total of NYU New York over a course of its 100-something year history. So we're doing, it's a great place. I can't say enough about it. And we're very pleased to be part of the conference. Another thing that Professor Galligan mentioned was our inaugural lecture. This was 3 years ago for the law program, the legal studies program at NYU Abu Dhabi. He very kindly responded to my invitation to speak at it. He was one of the principal speakers. And I don't mean to embarrass him, but this is not a surprise. His remarks were brilliant and just really wonderful. And so all the more reason to think that this historic conference is going to make contributions in many different ways. And I have full confidence that we get this thing off the ground and running. First, the conference, the past, the present, and the future of the UAE Constitution, and then continuing on with that work in the research. Very, very important. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you. I'm coming from New York City, by the way, this morning. Here's one anecdote. I left the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, about a week ago, and it was 50 degrees, 122 in Fahrenheit. And now I'm in New York City, where it's, I think, much more akin to London in the weather. It's kind of a pleasant late spring day here. The sun's shining for a change. So it's good to be with you. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce the next speaker, who's Andrew Hart. And he's the program director for the the OCC, the Sands of Time, and this conference. And he also, along with Monica, has done a lot of work, a lot of legwork in putting this all together. So Andrew, I turn it over to you.
Very kind of you, John. Thank you so much. And can I firstly say thank you very much to everybody for taking time out of your day today to join us. It's great to have you along. As John said, my name's Andrew Hart. I'm the Joint Managing Director of Oxford Cyber Academy and the Project Director for our research arm, the Oxford Commission on Constitutions. I have a very personal attachment to and a great affection for Abu Dhabi. My father arrived there in the 1960s, and there was little more to gaze at than sand and sea. For days on end, he once told me that his routine would only ever be interrupted by the occasional greeting from a local fisherman. So I just hope it was a welcoming greeting that he got. I'd like to share with you, if I may, an image of the Corniche. And if I can just get my screen up here and just swap a picture for you. And it's this one here. This is the Corniche as it was in the early 70s, and that's when I first arrived. And it shows how large areas were still clearly awaiting development. But you can see the planning was already way ahead. Look at the infrastructure of the roads. There may be no buildings, but you can certainly get to wherever there's going to be there very quickly. So they had an excellent infrastructure of roads whilst I was there, and it was quite fascinating. But at that particular time, there was very little between the beach hotel at one end and the Hilton, which had been newly finished at the other. And from that time to the present day, we've seen a dramatic and exciting change to what began life as little more than a fishing village. And our Sands of Time project has been created to celebrate the past 50 years and to gather the many stories that there are to be told as the UAE blossomed, and its capital, Abu Dhabi in particular, grew into the vibrant city that it is today. So I can just take this off now, and I'm sort of learning as I go along with this screen system here. So there we are, and you've got me back again. I'm sure you'd probably rather look at pictures of Abu Dhabi. So we want to make the most of the great relationship our nations share with one another, and to discover together the cultural, artistic, and intellectual past, and to open up and take a good look at what the future offers together. As you've heard, OCC and NYU Abu Dhabi are organising an historic conference with definitive research to follow. But the programme plan goes much beyond this. We're planning exhibitions in both Oxford and Abu Dhabi to bring an increased awareness of the role of the UAE and its importance on the world stage to the public domain. We also plan to offer educational courses that will invite exchange programmes as well as civic education projects in the UAE. And so together with art and culture exhibitions, post-conference publications, online exhibitions of photographs, documents and interviews, and a gallery devoted to subjects of historical interest, there is a broad sweep of projects ripe for collaboration. Oxford isn't only the home to one of the world's finest universities. It also plays host to an active and well-respected infrastructure supporting music and the arts. We're very keen to explore joint ventures in these disciplines as part of our UAE 50 celebrations. And of course, we are keen to work with you to explore the possibilities of a presence at the World Expo in Dubai, which runs now from October this year until March 2022. I think it's very important here to say that education is our keenest focus. And we plan to create and deliver partnership programs to answer a variety of learning needs. And we invite collaboration and support for these and our other initiatives to follow the UAE 50 conference in November. Ultimately, our goal is to create a strong cultural and educational relationship between the UAE and our nations. And in so doing, to create some unique opportunities for you to get involved, to share your ideas, to contribute, and to collaborate in what will be a very exciting series of projects. We will be creating a special web presence for Sands of Time, where those of you who have been a part of and experienced the past 50 years of the development and growth of the UAE can share your stories, images, and even upload short videos so we can so that we can archive and save these unique memories and preserve them for the next generation. I look forward to hearing from some of you at the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. But in the meantime, let me hand over to my colleague, Richard Knowlton, who will explain how Oxford Cyber Academy will be supporting the educational aims of the UAE 50 programme.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And my name is Richard Knowlton. I sit on the advisory board of the Oxford Commission on Constitutions as Foreign Affairs Advisor. It's a particular pleasure for me to be working on our programme because, like several of my colleagues, I have a personal connection with the UAE that goes back many years. I worked in the British Embassy in the early 90s, and around 10 years later, I came back to work in the private sector for another couple of years. As others have said, the 50th anniversary of the foundation of the UAE makes us all think how much the world has changed since 1971, and of course, not always for the better. In those years, the UAE has been quite extraordinarily successful. As you've heard, a key part of our programme will be to look at the role of the Constitution as the bedrock of that success. But our programme will look forward too. And it's obvious that the changes of the next 50 years will be even more remarkable. How far will the Constitution continue its success in fostering the well-being and economic development of its citizens and residents? And that brings me to the role of the Oxford Cyber Academy in this programme. I'm Director of Security Studies at the Academy, the main Oxford partner for our UAE 50 programme, as you heard earlier. A central fact of the next 50 years will be the ongoing fourth industrial revolution, the major technological shift that's taking digital devices and superfast connectivity to the very center of all of our lives. Every society is having to come to terms with the skills, education, and training implications of this digital revolution. And many, honestly, are struggling. We've seen this most clearly during the COVID pandemic, with millions of workers forced to work from home at short notice, a process that neither they nor their companies were properly prepared for. We've seen some of the results. Cyber criminals have had a field day with astronomical increases in fraud, theft, and extortion in every sector. Meanwhile, millions of students of every age were forced into home learning. Suddenly they, and equally importantly their teachers, faced a digital skills and knowledge gap that goes well beyond just being able to use social media on smartphones. COVID's taught us that it's not enough just to roll out the right kit and fast broadband. That's obviously essential, but it's much more complicated than that. The fact is that societies that fail to prepare their people adequately with digital education and skills are going to be left behind. A central part of our programme will be to look at these issues from an educational and skills perspective. And I'm really looking forward to developing this work with government and business in the UAE over the next few years. But meanwhile, Andrew, back to you for the next part of our presentation.
Thanks very much indeed, Richard. Well, we've reached the point where we would really like to invite any of you that have any questions to put those questions to anybody on the panel. I have actually over the past few days, weeks, collated a few questions anyway, because people have been commonly asking us certain things and they seem to be a sort of theme to it. So I've got those that I can start off with anyway, in case shyness is overcoming our attendees. And don't worry if it is, because I've been an attendee on many webinars and I always seem to be overcome with shyness when somebody says, well, ask me a question then, you know. Perhaps we've been brilliant and given you all the information you actually need. One other thing that we are so keen to have you share with us, and this is something we will be building on with the Sands of Time project with its own interactive website, is anecdote stories that you can bring to us from the last 50 years. And there is one anecdote I would like to start us off with, if you don't mind, and then invite you to also have yours. And this was, if you'll notice earlier, I did put up a photograph of the Hilton Hotel. And apparently, the first private party at the Hilton Hotel was my father and mother's 25th wedding anniversary, which oddly enough fell around the same time as my 18th. So they very kindly asked me to to join them for it and to celebrate with them. So I was very happy to do this. I have to point out at this stage that my father then spent the next 20 years complaining about how much it actually cost him. But nevertheless, it was an incredibly enjoyable evening. But there was something very unique. Upstairs, Asprey's, the jewellers from London, were holding it could only be described really as an exhibition. It was actually a market, if you like, almost like a grand market stall. They'd taken over one floor of the Hilton Hotel in one of their reception areas. And they had these jewels out. And there was a thumb ring, as soon as I walked through the door, a thumb ring worth £250,000. There was a necklace worth £500,000, and absolutely no security whatsoever, apart from a heavily armed and rather mean-looking gentleman up the entrance as you went in. But apart from that, you were allowed to walk around and try on all these fabulous jewels. I'm reliably informed they sold one necklace and took orders for another 2. And interestingly enough, when I flew home, I was on the same plane as the jewels that were going back. So, but that's really quite a nice memory that I have of being in Abu Dhabi and mixing with the wealthy. It's really nice and most enjoyable. So, right, I've got a question here from Dr. Elias Boutros-Saya. He says, I've been in the UAE for the last 50 years. How can I participate? Well, Monica, would you like to answer that one if I give you the floor?
Absolutely. I just sent a message saying that, you know, if you would like to actually join the conversation just now, just please raise your hand and we will give you the floor. I don't know whether that's the case. But otherwise, yes. There
we go. No, it's all right. There we are. And I'm going to promote you, Dr. Elias, to a panelist. So you will come in and we'll be able to see you. I hope anyway. Let's have a look. Here we are. I'm going to. There we go. There we are. So yes. We should be able to hear you. Yes. There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for the people who they have a good morning. Thank you so much for the nice presentation. And without me introducing Oxford, you are well known of what you have. And you stand for what you have as well. I have been in the United Arab Emirates for the last 50 years. I came with my late father back in 1970 to this country, February 1970. And I'd love to share stories and I'd love to share my experience in this great country, which is called the United Arab Emirates.
Well, thank you very much. That's absolutely wonderful to hear. And we will contact you after the webinar so that we can stay in touch with you and discuss ways in which we can share the stories that you have and so that you can play a part in the program. Thank you very much indeed for that, Dr. Saya. That's lovely. Thank you.
And whatever we can sponsor and whatever we can support, I will be more than happy to do so.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very kind.
And one thing I would like just to say for everyone that they are hearing, we were one time at a great event at the British Embassy in United Arab Emirates. And it was Prince, the brother of Prince Charles, Prince Andrew, Prince Andrew, his name? Yes. He was visiting the United Arab Emirates. And I said, Prince, forgive me, everything in this country has changed and have improved and developed, except the British Embassy. And he looked at me like this and he said, Elias, what do you mean? We British, we don't develop? I said, yes, you do. But the only place that has remained unchanged in the United Arab Emirates is the British Embassy, where it still stands. And I'm sure all my colleagues do agree with me of what I'm saying. And we will share more stories, we will share more experience with my rulers of the United Arab Emirates, how I have met him, how a wisdom he has, and how a great memory he has from 1971 to 2001. First time I met him 71. Last time I met him in 2001, and he could remember who I was and what I did. So fantastic. A leader like that it cannot go without sharing his story and his wisdom. So I'm ready to share with you offline and participate and support this program.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Saeed Anis, you have a question, I believe. Hello? Saeed Anis? Oh, you've got mute on at the moment.
Are you talking to me?
No, no. It was one of our attendees by the name of Saeed Anis who, yes, who had a question.
Yeah. I can hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello, Saeed. Welcome.
How are you? First of all, I really thank you for organizing this event, which was so important, celebrating the 50 years. This is unparalleled way of we can see United Arab Emirates progress with the 7 Emirates together under unity. It's really not easy. I'm here for last more than 38 years, and we really, our family and everyone flourish, and seen from where to where in all areas of life, from infrastructure to health to education, you name anything, and the progress is there. It's not easy to attract 200 nationalities living in United Arab Emirates. It is commendable to all the rulers who made progress together with the world. You know that UAE on the map, not many countries was aware. Now, UAE is one of the leading countries of the world. Without UAE, nothing moves here internationally. And this credit goes to the vision of our late Sheikh Zayed and his family, and Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and the other Emirates ruler family, working hand to hand with everyone. It is commendable to say that it's all how you plan it, 50 years. And I really admire the leadership that they are planning for another 50 years. So that's the way, if you plan it, you achieve it. And in spite of so many challenges in the world.
Well, thank you very much. That's great. Thank you, Saeed. That's really, really, that's good to hear from you as well. And
thank you for organizing Oxford.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a question here from Charles, is it? It's a question for Denis, for Professor Galligan. In what ways could the UAE constitution serve as an example for other countries? He says probably not, I suppose, because of the federal nature, but maybe instead the fact that the UAE government actually follows the rules that have been devised for it. What are your views on that, Denis?
Well, that's certainly an interesting question. There's no simple answer to that, but what I've noticed in my own research is that some constitutional systems stand out as models for others. Some endure for reasons we don't fully understand, of course, but some do last from one generation to another. And in that sense, I think they do become useful models. Now, a couple of points to keep in mind. Of course, each nation has its own character, its own issues to confront. Often they are historical issues, but they're also issues for the present and the future. So again, in experience of other constitutions ranging from, let's say, Hungary to Pakistan to Australia and so on, looking at those, some do emerge as models which others can follow, not just repeat, not just parrot, but the basic principles, the basic structure can be followed and adjusted in accordance with the particular characteristics of that country. Now, a federal case is quite interesting because in the United Kingdom at the moment, may I say, my own opinion is that a federal system would solve many of our problems. federal system of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. I'm not sure this opinion is widely shared, but it has there will be a conference later on the year that I'm organizing on this precise issue. It seems to me that federalism, which is the coming together of very different nations, states. We think perhaps of the United States as a good case of federalism, but they were fairly similar states. If we look elsewhere in the world, Pakistan's not a bad example, or even at states like, nations like India, which are federations in a certain sense. What holds these enormously diverse societies together? Well, many factors, but the Constitution is one of them. So the real question, the very interesting question is, what is it about a Constitution? What are the critical features of a Constitution that perhaps serve in a federal system? UAE being a very successful federal system from what I've been able to understand, could therefore be a model for others which are struggling in a way to bring together smaller states to form a larger union. It's successful. The UAE does appear to be a very successful model. So what's its secret? That's the point. What's the secret? But I don't mean to convey the idea that one country just copies another. That's a very bad mistake. Again, I encountered that in Eastern Europe. The American Constitution or the German Constitution, and occasionally the French, were the models that everyone followed. Very bad idea. The idea is to find a model and then adjust it according to the local conditions, the local issues, the cultural mix, for example. As in countries where you have an enormous diversity, ethnic, cultural, religious even, that poses its own particular issues. Or if you have a distinct minority, as in Kazakhstan, a small Russian minority at the top of there, which Russia claims belongs to it. So how do the Kazakh authorities deal with that minority? Anyhow, I won't go on too long. I could give you a lecture on this subject, but that's what I mean by a model.
Thanks ever so much, Denis. I mean, if that's anything to go by, that's a bit of an insight into just how fascinating and interesting this conference will be. I mean, I was really quite captured by a lot of what Denis was saying there, and I think it opens the doors to a lot of wanting to know more. So thank you very much for that really comprehensive answer, Denis. That was good of you. I think we've probably got time for one more question, and this is for Monica. I've got a question here. Here's a challenging one for you, Monica. Who are your competitors in this field, and when, and where they really exist? In what ways are you different to them? So can I get you to answer that one?
Well, that's indeed an interesting, interesting question. Yes, when we started this project, we actually did the due diligence and looked around to see, who are the competitors, who are the ones who are doing different or similar project to us. And we also were trying to find collaborative partners. So that was the other reason we looked who's doing what around the 50th anniversary of the UAE. And what we found was, and that's quite interesting, that there are not that many projects related to educational projects. And also we haven't found anything on the 50th anniversary of the Constitution or any kind of research that is looking into the issues that we are proposing to look into. So we would like to believe that this is in this way a unique project and actually a very important one. We've been talking about the importance of the Constitution when it comes to a predictable environment for running businesses, setting up courts and dispute resolution, and all sorts of other issues like the protection and security of rights. So this is incredibly important, and we like to think that it's going to be a novel and good project and just a lot of benefits for the whole society.
Thanks very much, Monica. Right, we're sort of moving towards the point where we need to close this. Can I just say very quickly before I hand over to Nick Cochrane, and then it again, just to close us out, it will be the lovely Monica, that any of you who have asked questions, we will answer them. So although we haven't had time today, we will address those and keep in touch with you. So thank you if you have asked a question but haven't received an answer yet. So thanks very much indeed. So over to you, to Nick.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you to all of our panelists. Just a very super quick anecdote. I've got a book of anecdotes, so I won't go into all of them, don't worry. But very relevant to what you've just been talking about, I had a German lawyer this week talking to me about how they were referring to the Constitution, may have been written 50 years ago, but it's still being referred to as we speak. So, you know, it is an amazing document that is surviving the time, and obviously an important topic for all of us to discuss for the future. I'd just like to add my thanks and reiterate my thanks to the panelists, to Lord Edward Udny-Lister. I'd like to thank Dr. Monica, Sinead from the BBG, Liz from AmCham, Brad from UUBC. I mean, this has been a real team effort in getting this thing up and running, and it's only the beginning. It's got great legs for the future. Professor Denis, obviously, and Professor John, thank you both for sharing your expertise. Andrew, obviously, perfect host, even if this is first time. I think you're born natural. You've got a new career ahead of you there, sir.
Thank you, I might need it.
Thank you. Good to see you again. We remember each other from the British Embassy in the 90s. And great to see all the friends on the webinar as well. Rauda and Tariq and Dr. Saidal Ali, thank you. Dr. Case from the Pakistani business group. Dr. Elias, thank you for contributing. You know, it's fun. I've enjoyed it, that's for sure. And I hope everybody else has enjoyed, as well as having learned. Every day is a school day, and it's been a good learning for me as well today. So wonderful day. Thank you all, and I wish you a healthy evening. And now back to Monica to send us out for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you so much, Nick. I can only join you in thanking everyone for coming, all the panelists, all the attendees. And we will be in touch. I hope you all had a good time. You can find our contact details on our website and on the invitation. And just a reminder that this webinar has been recorded and it will be made available. So, you know, if there's any part you would like to look at again, then please do so and be in touch. Thank you so much for coming.
That's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.